Well, the federal opposition leader was today forced to clarify whether he supported his shadow treasurer's 9-point plan to rein in the banks. Tony Abbott spent much of the day fielding questions about whether he endorsed Joe Hockey's strategy. In the end, he did, but at one point, Mr Abbott decided silence was the best option. The opposition leader has also rejected reports that Mr Hockey was strongly criticised during shadow cabinet meetings for his banking proposal. From Canberra, Susan McDonald reports.
With his old political mentor in town, Tony Abbott basked in the attention from the youth crowd.
Thank you so much.
But with the following press pack, he was far more coy. Earlier, the opposition leader was asked to endorse his shadow treasurer's proposal to boost bank competition. He declined the opportunity 3 times.
Do you support his proposals?
I think it's very important that we expose the bluster of this government.
But do you support Mr Hockey's 9-point plan?
Look, I've dealt with that issue.
While Tony Abbott hesitated, Julia Gillard didn't.
I did this morning think for a brief moment that maybe the Leader of the Opposition was turning away from the foolish course of following the shadow treasurer.
Realising the interpretation, Mr Abbott rang radio stations to clarify his position.
You know what it's like in these doorstops, you've got a lot on your mind. But as I said, I just want to make it crystal clear. I fully support the 9-point plan.
But given the chance to say it again, he wouldn't.
I had this instinct to talk.
It's a good instinct.
The government didn't hold back in a question-time tongue-lashing.
There is now a fracturing of consensus within the Liberal Party.
The opposition leader rejects reports of internal ructions over the Hockey doctrine. The shadow treasurer himself is digging in.
I am not backing down one step from everything that I have said, and I have delivered on behalf of the coalition in relation to banking in the last few days.
There is nothing else in any of those 9 points but populism. There is no substance, Mr Speaker. There's about as much meat in the Shadow Treasurer's plan as a pack of chicken nuggets, Mr Speaker.
How can slagging and bagging the opposition about our position be relevant to the
Manager of opposition business to resume the seat.
I think this thing about the banks is overhyped by his critics.
Joe Hockey has the backing of John Howard, but is he as good as Mr Howard's own treasurer, Peter Costello?
I don't think he's in that league at present. No, of course not. But he hasn't had a chance at the job.
Beyond the damage control, the shadow treasurer put all his efforts into a fresh cost of living campaign against the government. He was armed with the day's inflation figures, revealing price rises in electricity, housing and childcare. But the broader number is actually a good one for the government. Inflation came in at a lower than expected 0.7% for the September quarter, 2.8% for the year, comfortably within the Reserve Bank's target range.
Now at its lowest levels in 5 years, Mr Speaker. So I would have thought those opposite might have had something positive to say about that.
Over the past year, electricity prices have risen 12.4%, water and sewerage up 12.8%. They are hefty increases for everyday Australians.
For homeowners, economists now say a November interest rate rise is unlikely.
The case for raising rates next Tuesday doesn't look as strong as it did perhaps 5 or 6 weeks ago.
If the RBA does move on Melbourne Cup Day, Wayne Swan has issued the banks his regular warning.
There is no justification for very profitable banks moving above any change in the cash rate that should come from the Reserve Bank.
There are 2 races to watch next Tuesday. Susan McDonald, Late Line.